Leftists are starting to panic as deep state operatives are trying to intimidate eyewitnesses to voter fraud. In this video, we're going to take a look at the admission among leftists that they are indeed beginning to get pretty nervous here, how the deep state has actually tried to intimidate and silence eyewitnesses to illegal voting, and how the Trump administration is getting closer to overturning these election results and scoring an astonishing victory. You're not going to want to miss this. Now, we're going to dive right into things here. But first, a huge shout out to all of our veterans on this Veterans Day. We all thank you so much for your service. We owe you more than we could ever hope to repay, and you are the true heroes of our nation. Thank you, veterans. And let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's Collagen, available at my special website, healthwithsteveturley.com. Now, if you don't know, collagen may be the closest thing we'll ever get to a real fountain of youth. Many health experts now agree that consuming collagen helps to renew and revitalize how you look and how you feel. Taking collagen regularly can revitalize your body, make your skin, bones, and even your hair look and feel more healthy and youthful. I use it every day. I put it in my coffee in the morning. It's great. And if you click on that link below today, you can get 51% off your order. But that's a limited time offer, so don't wait. Click on that link below today and get your own collagen supply. You will certainly be glad that you did. All right, so let's dive right in here. As the deep state, the Democrats, and the mainstream Marxist media have all together colluded to coronate Joe Biden as president-elect, even though constitutionally, he is not. Electors, not reporters, most especially not left-wing activists disguised as journalists, decide who is and who is not president. But as they attempt to push this fraud that a bunch of rabid leftists at the AP have the sovereign power to definitively determine the presidency, there are brief moments of reality that are starting to set in among leftists. And they're beginning to panic, or at the very least, they're starting to get nervous. They're recognizing that something indeed is going on here beneath the surface, where President Trump and his allies are indeed maneuvering in such a way that most certainly can completely thwart any future Biden presidency. Take a look at this article from the ultra left-wing site, The Nation. Trump is trying to overturn the election, right? There's that fake news that the media appoints presidents rather than electors. Trump is trying to overturn the election, but I'm not panicking yet. And when you read through this, I think you see a representative nervousness that Trump forces are indeed in the process of exposing a level of voter fraud and constitutional violations that most certainly can overturn the election results that have thus far been put forward in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania by the media. The key here is to recognize that the Trump legal team, first and foremost, has a single goal, and that's to prevent the certification of the election results as they currently stand by the secretaries of the states of these particular states on the grounds that the election results are compromised. And they're compromised by at least three factors. First, because of the various acts of election fraud as witnessed to by hundreds of the signed affidavits that, under the penalty of perjury, all detail eyewitness accounts of election fraud in the forms of counting illegal ballots or changing ballots or preventing Republican poll watchers from seeing the ballots as they're being counted and the like. Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel says that she has over 500 signed affidavits detailing over 11,000 cases of voter fraud. There are over 131 eyewitness signed affidavits in Michigan alone willing to testify regarding flagrant election violations. Or you may have heard of James O'Keefe's investigation of how federal agents have actively tried to coerce a U.S. Postal Service whistleblower to water down his story so that the media could run around and gleefully report he recanted, which he emphatically says he did not. A postal worker by the name of Richard Hopkins went on record accusing Postmaster Rob Weisenbach of ordering the backdating of ballots to November 3rd in Erie, Pennsylvania. Project Veritas has released a video not only with Hopkins asserting that he emphatically did not recant his allegations of election fraud as was published by the swamp rag, the Washington Post, but also Project Veritas posted recordings of federal agents actively attempting to coerce and intimidate Hopkins into recanting, which of course raises the question, why the hell are federal agents trying to intimidate eyewitnesses to this election? That's going to be a very interesting question to pursue in the days ahead. So these eyewitness testimonies are crucial to getting the courts as well as the legislatures to order a halt to certifying the election results. But that's only one of three factors that are delegitimizing this vote. Second, Trump's lawyers are arguing that the election results are compromised because non-legislature officials, such as judges in Pennsylvania, set the time, place, and manner of the election when Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution explicitly states that the setting of the time, place, and manner of any election is the sole responsibility of the state legislatures. And so these judicial activists have blatantly violated the U.S. Constitution. And thirdly, Trump voters have been disenfranchised by ballot machine glitches and malfunctions, such as the more infamous ones coming out of the Dominion voting systems, which have demonstrably changed thousands, if not tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of votes that were originally cast for Trump over to Biden. So affidavits, unconstitutional decisions, and disenfranchisement are the three main arguments being used to stop the certification of these results. And by the way, we may not even have to wait for the courts. Pennsylvania House Republicans are calling for a legislative-led audit of the 2020 election, and they are insisting that election results not be certified nor electors be seated until the audit is complete. In other words, the Pennsylvania Republican lawmakers who own both the state House and Senate are rising up and taking control of this election process precisely as the United States Constitution requires them to. We're seeing a similar movement as well in Wisconsin. The Republican Wisconsin Assembly Speaker Robin Vos is directing a committee to review the entire statewide election process after credible revelations of voter fraud, especially in light of reports of midnight ballot dumping that were all for Joe Biden. It's also just been announced that the president of the Republican-controlled Arizona Senate is calling for an independent analysis of voting data in the state before their votes are certified. And that is the key. If you cannot certify the vote, you can't appoint electors. And if you can't appoint electors, then you can't elect a president. So this effectively puts the whole election on hold. And then you have a few possible outcomes. On the one hand, you recanvass and you recount. Okay, a recanvass is basically an audit of the vote, where county clerks and election officials review the absentee votes, the mail-in ballots, make sure that there's what's called a verified chain of custody with the mail-in ballots and the like. They compare the total vote turnout with voter registration numbers to see if they can weed out votes from those who changed their address, so they might have voted twice, or remove dead people from the voter rolls, all that kind of stuff. So one outcome is after full recanvassing and recount, Biden still wins. He still has enough votes. But that, of course, disregards the unprecedented levels of fraud that the signed affidavits are all pointing to here. So that's just whistling past the graveyard if you're a Democrat. Speaking of, I don't know if you saw this one. One review found 10,000, quote, dead people who supposedly returned mail-in ballots in Michigan alone. 10,000 dead people voted. So the leftists are really getting nervous here in that they're realizing that if we are dealing with an unprecedented level of fraud, and they know they cheated, that would mean potentially tens of thousands of Biden votes getting thrown out, which would most certainly change the results of this election. So the most likely scenario is that the level of voter fraud was such that a recanvass and a recount will switch a couple of states back to Trump and give him the election in return. But that's not the only thing that the Trump team has in mind to win this. The best is yet to come. But first, I want to make sure you know that we are offering a special Veterans Day promotion of my Nationalist Populist book bundle. As of today, you can get 5 of my best books on the rise of nationalist populism all over the world. So we're talking my New Nationalism, we're talking The Return of Christendom, we're talking President Trump and our post-secular future, The Triumph of Tradition, and Uprising on the Yellow Vest Populist Revolt. All you have to do is click on that link below in the pinned comments section. You can get a coupon for 30% off all 5 books. And you even have the option to get some really awesome swag like our Turley Talks tumblers here. So don't wait. This is our Veterans Day special. So click on that link below. Get 30% off our Nationalist Populist book bundle today. Now, of course, if Trump is successful in switching some of the states back into his column after the recanvassing and recounts, the Biden campaign isn't going to just roll over with that, and they'll take those results to court, and we'll be going back and forth through litigation procedures all the way up to the Supreme Court. But another possible outcome in the meantime is that the recanvass can't determine how many of the ballots were invalid, like the problem we're having in Pennsylvania, where election officials were required by a direct order from Justice Sam Alito to separate all ballots received after 8 p.m. on November 3rd from all ballots cast prior to 8 p.m. The problem, of course, is because in Philly and Pittsburgh, election officials barred Republican observers from the counting process. We don't know how many of those votes that arrived after 8 p.m. were mashed in with the vote total. We simply don't know it. And so the courts may have no choice but to invalidate the vote in Pennsylvania and possibly even Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia because of all of these irregularities. So the first goal is to put a halt on the certification of the votes by the various secretaries of states in these contested states. And the second goal is to either flip the state by virtue of recanvassing and recounting, which will purge the fraudulent votes from the total and turn the state back to Trump, or to get the Supreme Court ultimately to invalidate the vote in these states. And if the votes are invalidated, then by definition, no candidate has reached 270 electoral votes. And if no candidate has reached 270 electoral votes, then the Constitution requires that the House of Representatives takes up the responsibility of electing the president. And when that happens, I don't know if you know this, but every state gets one vote. There are delegates that are sent to represent each state in the House of Representatives. And everyone gets one vote. California gets one vote. Rhode Island gets one vote from the delegates. This according to the 12th Amendment. And were that to take place, you would have 31 states led by Republicans versus 19 states led by Democrats. And Donald Trump will easily be reelected president if this goes to the House of Representatives. This is why the Democrats are starting to get nervous. The ones who have thought this thing through are recognizing that the only way Trump actually loses his election is if he concedes, which of course he won't. But if he doesn't concede, and if Republican legislatures or the courts invalidate the vote in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, then minus 270, this goes to Congress. And this election goes to Congress, the Democrats have lost. Biden actually loses hands down. That is what they're beginning to get so nervous about. The Democrats who are really paying attention here are beginning to get nervous that if this goes to Congress, Trump gets reelected. That's why you're seeing this information warfare from the media coronating him as president-elect. That's why we're seeing the deep state trying to intimidate eyewitnesses. They know that if this goes to Congress, as it could very well, Biden loses and Trump wins. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. And you will definitely want to check out my latest video. I just uploaded it on how President Trump has finally won North Carolina as the arrogance of the dismissive liberal media is red-pilling Americans like never before. You're not going to want to miss that. So make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.